All right, everyone. We will get started on this Wednesday night. So, first of all, thank you to everyone who's watching live, and thank you to everyone who will be tuning into this video. We always post all our presentations and webinars onto YouTube. So, thank you for being here for what we feel is a really important and crucial conversation, talking about preserving your students and your family's mental health when it comes to navigating the college admissions journey. Um, I want to dive right in because we have a lot of material to cover. So I want to introduce myself. My name is Eric Karlan, and I am one of the co-founders of Ivy Experience. Just for some background on who we are, my business partner, Karan Shah, and I co-founded Ivy Experience back in 2010, pretty much straight out of college. We started as a small local company in the Philadelphia area. Word of mouth is an amazing power. And we've now, over the past 16 years, worked with students in more than 40 states and 20 countries, be accepted to more than 500 universities worldwide, which is just have been an amazing journey. And a big part of that, in connecting with so many students and families, has not just been being successful and helping students get into the colleges where they want to go, but really being there for families and supporting them throughout the process. We don't just give expert advice on admissions. We are there in the trenches with families, building close relationships all throughout the process. And that's really a hallmark of who we've been for the past 16 years on an individual level and even on a bigger level, right? One of our biggest things that we do is really empowering people through education and dispelling myths, giving good information, all in the hopes of reducing anxiety and stress surrounding this pressure-filled process as much as possible. So, why are we here tonight? May is Mental Health Awareness Month. I know it's March right now. It's the last week of March. We're going to be doing programming in a few weeks throughout the month of May, to talking more about how to support students. But we really wanted tonight to be a sneak preview of what's ahead and more of the information and support systems we put out there. Tonight, if you haven't heard from texts and social media and just being in the high school scene, there's a lot of regular decisions coming out. And tomorrow night is one of the biggest nights. It's, what people call Ivy night, when most of the Ivy League schools release all of their regular decisions the same evening. Really, by the end of next week, every college for this year's graduating class of seniors is going to be, every decision is going to be released, not counting the wait list, which is a whole separate conversation. Um, but zooming out in a more macro sense, why are we here tonight? You can see some of these quotes on the screen right now. The devastating mental health crisis. And I think it's worth noting that these statistics are not just from this year. And even though, you know, you could say, okay, well, some of them are aligning with the pandemic lockdown years, right? When things were bad then. But then you see, in 2019, right, in that second bullet point, um, this crisis of mental health amongst teens, high school applicants, it's not new. It's not new at all. This has been going on for a long time. COVID, as it did to many things in this world, it accelerated, it exposed, it illuminated a problem that was already there. And, it's just more obvious now. Um, the good news of something being more obvious is we can have more open conversations and hopefully try to tackle this as much as possible, which is what we want to do tonight. Um, the stressors around the college application process are numerous. To name a few, the pressure to achieve academically, social pressures. This is a big one, right? Because while the next bullet point is family issues and tensions, and a lot of people who hear what my company does and what I personally do for work, they go, "Oh wow, you must deal with intense and difficult parents." And I go, "Guys, you know, these kids are putting enormous amounts of pressure on each other. There's so many parents who call us now and they say, look, I just want my kid to be happy, but the social environment and the community expectations are really weighing on them, right? So that's a huge piece of it. It's not to dismiss family issues and tensions entirely, but it's both more than ever. Obviously, social media is a big piece of this, and we'll talk about that in a little bit too, right? Overcommitted, overstressed, packed school, social calendars, all of these things are contributing to the stressors that lead up to this moment, to this week, right? That moment when decisions come back, right? And culminating this entire high school journey. And that's why we really want to take a minute to encourage everyone to pause and stop, right? Because the temptation to doom scroll and listen to people's decisions and the stress that surrounds that and the analysis from other leading college experts, it's easy to fall into that trap. We really want to encourage families, especially if you are the parent of an incoming high school student, a current ninth, 10th, or 11th grader. Really hear me out tonight and understand that we want to empower you in this journey. Tonight is about empowerment. It's not about fear mongering. We could have lots of intellectual, fascinating, intense conversations about trends in, college admissions and data, and we did that a little bit, right? We had a state of early admissions webinar last month. We are doing a state of admissions webinar next month because educating people on the landscape of college admissions and what is new and evolving, it is important, but this is even more important, right? Because no matter what changes in the college admissions landscape, caring for your child and empowering and supporting them and cheering them on throughout the process, promoting their mental health and their happiness and well-being as much as possible, that's evergreen. And to that point, I want to introduce the four pillars of tonight's conversation: real conversations, real care, empowerment through expectations, better person, better applicant, and happiness equating to success. So let's dive in with real conversations, real care. The way that we talk about college admissions at home is really the starting point of how students are going to react throughout this process. And we are truly big believers that honesty is an essential pillar in this journey because there's nothing that's going to be blunter than a college decisions letter, right? That doesn't mean cold, dispassionate honesty, but warm, encouraging, supportive honesty. It is so essential to remember as you enter this journey as a family that everyone has the same goals, right? The student wants to get into a school. Maybe they have a dream school, maybe they don't, but they want to get into college. And the parent or the guardian, the person loving this child and cheering and supporting them on, they share that goal. They also want the student to thrive and succeed and be successful in this journey. We're on that team too when you bring us on that team. We want to be in the trenches with your student, with your family, making sure that everyone is supporting each other, treating each other and speaking with kindness and respect, even through the most difficult conversations. By the way, this is a truly important point. We engage parents throughout the process. They are copied on emails and texts. They have access to the essays. This is another hallmark of how we support students throughout the process because too often there is tension between teens and their parents in general, but especially when it comes to this process. And when we can be part of the team, we can mediate those conversations. As we say to students all the time, if your parent has a bad idea, we're going to shut them down swiftly. But if they have a good idea, we are going to honor that and highlight that. And you need to hear why it's a good idea. It can't just be, oh, everything's a bad idea that comes out of mom and dad's mouth, right? It's so essential that we're mediating and communicating and collaborating throughout this process and journey. It's also really important that when we come into this conversation, with families and are welcomed into this journey to highlight up front that we really do not care where our students go to college. We don't. Uh, we, I have the profanity you know, on this slide right here. And while it's there for dramatic and somewhat comedic effect, it's true. We really do not care where our students go to college. Not because we do not care about them. It's because we deeply and intensely care about them. Our success is our students' happiness. Our students' happiness is our success, not their bumper sticker. When we're advising students throughout this journey, that is the number one touchstone throughout the entire time working together. If a student is doing something that feels inauthentic, is bringing them unhappiness, doesn't feel like what they want out of their life, out of their academic journey, we are going to be their advocates. And at the end of the road, we are going to be pushing them not just to get into some brand name school, but so that they have as many options as possible. If they get higher grades and higher test scores and have a more meaningful and engaged and authentic and joyful resume, and their essays shine and highlight their voices and their values and their character, then they will have more options. And we want our students to be more of the choosers than the choosies at the end of this journey. That's why we keep it real. Again, nothing is blunter than a college decision letter. So we need to be deeply supportive. We need to be invested and compassionate throughout this process. We also need to be real throughout this process and this journey. And we are. And that can lead some difficult moments. There's an old expression about, not doing anything mean to a messenger. And we know that sometimes we're the messengers, and that's a difficult conversation. But we really try to always bring it back and remind students and their parents where we are and who we are. We want to be coaches and mentors and support systems, and we want everyone working together with that goal in mind. So framing conversations into reality, yes, you're hearing this, but don't be discouraging. When I know there's a lot of parents right now who are fascinated by crunching data. Students too, by the way, right? But when we are ingesting and digesting this data ourselves or talking about it and sharing it amongst each other, present that data as facts, not as discouragement, right? Fact, this school has a low single digit acceptance rate. That's not a personal reflection on you, my child, that you probably won't get in there. That's just statistical analysis, right? You are wonderful. You have straight A's. You have the test scores. You have an amazing resume. We say it all the time. Yes, You deserve to get in there. You are capable of getting in there. According to data, you probably won't, but that has nothing to do with you, and you should be so proud and so, excited about who you are and what you've accomplished, right? Even presenting realities, not just data as facts. Fact, you were deferred from an early decision college. That's really deflating and discouraging. We understand that. The silver lining for you as a human being is that deferral is validation that your grades and test scores and activities were good enough to have you seriously considered by that admissions office. You did enough to deserve to be considered for that school, and you very well may get in. And I will tell you, just tonight alone, we've had numerous students who were deferred from their early decision schools who are now into those universities, regular decision. We have some students who got waitlisted tonight from some amazing competitive institutions. And it's a separate conversation for a separate time, but some of those students will get off those wait lists. So presenting data as facts is important. Focus on the agency your student has in this process. If you've been to any of our other webinars, you've heard us say this. I'm not going to rehash this too much, but we always talk about the need to focus on what's in your control in this process because there are so many factors that go into a college admissions decision. Most of them are out of your student's control. I don't want to list them right now. They're innumerable. But there are 5 factors in your student's control that can directly enhance their application at any university. Their grades and their rigor, their standardized test scores, their extracurricular activities, their recommendation letters from their teachers and counselors, and the essays and applications themselves. Sometimes it's interesting and exciting and illuminating to have conversations about things going on in the college admissions world. We know just from reading current events and headlines in the past couple months how much is going on in this space. Schools going back to test required policies. Uh, University of California, San Diego, and their issues with students really struggling with basic math coming out of high school, going into college, etc. Great conversations in some cases, but when we're really focused on your student and their journey and empowering them, focus on what is in your control, my child. Focus on what you have agency over. Let's direct our efforts and energies there. And as you're having these conversations, be mindful that your student and your child is really going to be not always hearing your words literally. They're going to be listening for your tone. They're going to be listening for signs of disappointment or, a lack of belief. Teens are sensitive. It's a sensitive, vulnerable time. They're under a tremendous amount of pressure. So, as a parent or guardian, think about the way that I'm saying this, the words that I'm using, the tone that I have. What's my student going to hear? Are they going to hear that my parents don't believe in me? Nobody in no college wants me. My stories don't matter. My team and I hear that one all the time when we're starting the brainstorm about college essay ideas, right? Our students look at us and they're just saying right from the onset of brainstorming, I don't think anyone's going to care what I have to say, right? I'm not good enough. I can never do enough, right? That's a very sensitive line that we hear. And it's a tightrope that we have to walk as advisors, especially to ninth and 10th graders, when we do college counseling meetings and we're talking about advising students on their activities and reminding them it's not a matter of doing more, it's about living the best life possible. Are you doing that? Are you living the fullest happiest, most enriched life possible. We'll get to that a little bit more later. So, with each other and students who may be listening to this too, right? How do we have real conversations with real care? Be present, put the phones away, get off social media, ask questions, not from a place of judgment, but from a place of curiosity and open-mindedness, right? Be mindful of tone, limit interrogations, limit arguments, ask about feelings, understand those feelings, understand your students' motivations, hesitations, fears, insecurities, drive, right? And reflect together, talk about it, right? If you're not sure what your student's saying, respond. Hey, I just want to make sure I'm following you, just so we're all on the same page. Remember, this is an extremely vulnerable time for teenagers. I cannot say that enough times. A lot of parents will call us and say, guys, my child has never been this nervous or insecure or lost at any point in their academic journey. That's normal. If your child is reacting that way, they're not alone, right? Because this is for many students is the culmination of everything. And they feel that pressure and the weight of the world all of a sudden. So it also feels personal to students, right? I have said so many times throughout these past 16 years, the American admission system, for all its faults, is amazing. In many other countries, universities are just looking at students quantitatively, no aspect of qualitative evaluation. In the United States, the admission system, they're looking at students holistically. It's a beautiful thing in so many ways because you can contextualize who you are as a human being in your journey. But remember, even with that positive, there's also, I hesitate to call it a negative, but there's the reality that if the admissions process is more personal, it's going to feel more personal. Students are going to take their admissions decisions more personally because they're opening up their souls and their hearts and their minds and laying their heart, laying it all out there. And they're going to feel judged. And that leads to students withholding and clamming up and hesitating, shutting down. So, what we can do as advisors and parents and support systems and counselors is embrace vulnerability, make spaces vulnerable, make spaces safe for opening up. It's also worth noting that this surrounds the whole process, but especially in college list building. And this is going to be a bridge to our next pillar of the conversation tonight. Um, but remember that college list building is in your control. It's not going to enhance your odds of getting into a university, but it is oftentimes what we reference as like the sixth thing in your control, but we put an asterisk on it, right? Because it doesn't actually help you get into schools, but it can totally shape your mental health and emotions throughout this journey. Um, Thinking about how many essays do I need to write for these schools? How much merit scholarship money can I expect? What decisions are anticipated? We always say, be hopeful, but within reason and boundaries. The number one piece of advice I will give you, though, on college list building, and this is something that all of our coaches on our team emphasize, do not just focus on the reach schools as you build your list and plan college visits. Really emphasize at home, we need to find 2 to 3 likely options. I know that people will still call them safeties colloquially, but we call them likely options, right? Emphasize finding 2 to 3 likely options where you will see yourself thriving and be happy, right? I often use the analogy that finding likely colleges that are really great for your student is like buying good insurance. No one really likes shopping for good insurance, but everyone sleeps better at night when you have a good insurance plan in place. If your student every single night can lay down on their pillow and close their eyes and know, hey, if at the end of this journey things go really sideways and the only schools I get accepted to are my 2 to 3 likely schools, and I will still be happy, it will reduce an enormous amount of stress and pressure for your student and family in this journey. Be sensitive to that. Be mindful of that. It's not going to feel as sexy and fun and cool as looking at the reach schools, but it is essential as you navigate this journey. And the last thing I want to say is this. It's one of my favorite quotes in the entirety of my career. If you get into every college you applied to the wrong list of schools. I'll say it one more time because it bears repeating. If you get into every college you applied to the wrong list of schools. That was said to me by a friend of mine who's an admissions officer, and it has always stuck with me. It it is so important to remember that it's okay to reach and put yourself out there and be vulnerable. Don't be afraid of hearing the word no, because we talk a lot with students and parents about this idea of rejection versus regret. We would rather our students put themselves out there for a school and be denied than a situation where they don't, and maybe they get into all of the schools they apply to, and then they're sitting there after the journey and they go, well, now I'm curious. Now I wish I knew if I got into those other 1 or 2 or 3 schools that I thought I wouldn't be able to. And now they're no longer options unless students go through the arduous process of transferring, right? It's okay to put yourself out there. So that's really important. This brings us to the second pillar of this conversation tonight, empowerment through expectations. So, what do we mean by that? I want to define expectations really clearly up front in this part of the conversation, right? Because expectations can be a scary word, and not all of us have the same expectations. A coach and a parent and a student, all their expectations may not align, right? It's important to communicate so that people in the trenches as part of this team can be as united as possible. Because when expectations are shared and boundaries are set and limits are established, there's a lot of empowerment that comes and a stress that's reduced. So what do we mean by that? First of all, with academics, finding the right balance with rigor, knowing that that one extra AP class or that one extra honors class or that one extra IB course is not going to be the thing that makes or breaks your application. That is not how college admissions work, right? We want students to find the right balance where they're challenging themselves and they know, hey, look, if I challenge myself in this one extra class and I get a slightly lower grade, that's okay. The college can see that I was willing to put myself out there and challenge myself, right? Now, you don't want to put yourself out there for an extra class and then all your grades suffer. That's not balance. It's not finding the right balance. So, setting the right expectations and balance with academics is really essential. Also, expectations surrounding healthy study and organization habits, right? Laying a foundation for success, not just so that you get the highest grades or test scores to get into a college, but so that you're building life skills that are going to help you thrive at any university and, quite frankly, in any job in the future. So, making sure all of those things are satisfied is essential. Then we talk about extracurriculars, and we'll get into this a little bit more in the next pillar, better person, better applicant. But we cannot emphasize this enough. The expectations around extracurriculars should be focused on joy, purpose, meaning, impact, genuine interests. That is the key. And now that may sound very feel good and, we're just being nice and loving. Let me tell you something. That is cold, hard strategy. I'll illustrate it in a bit shortly, but this ties directly to the idea of better person, better applicant. And mind you, I will say this, and it bears repeating later on. Resume padding is extremely easy to spot, right? We can tell when students are just doing something for the sake of trying to look good for a college. In reality, the way to look for good for a college is to live a full, exciting, enriched life that's genuine and authentic. We'll get more into that momentarily. Expectations around essays. Again, the focus is on authenticity. There's a huge, let's just say it out loud. There's a huge trap that's been set for students to fall into that they go, oh, wow, there's these AI systems, and maybe I should lean on these to brainstorm, to outline, to come up with a sentence, a paragraph, to enhance the vocabulary or grammar in my essay. It's a trap. Don't do it. For starters, college essays are not a writing contest. The best written college essays are not the best college essays. I was actually just speaking with a student about this earlier today, and they said it was interesting because they had been reading some sample essays, and they said, at first it felt weird when I read samples and the language wasn't very beautiful. And then I realized that many of my favorite essays that I read didn't have the most beautiful language and the most enhanced vocabulary. There's a reason for that. The best college essays are the ones that are the most personal and personally insightful. Admissions officers are looking to connect with the student's authentic voice. They know when a student is writing in their voice. They know when a student is writing in their own words. They know, forget AI, they know when a parent or an adult or someone else is helping that student. Not just helping the student write the essay, that's not accurate. They know when a parent or an adult is writing the essay for a student. They know what a teenager's voice sounds like because that voice is going to be echoed and mirrored throughout the entire application, too. They're looking for consistency and authenticity. Encourage your student, as we encourage all of our students. This needs to be written in your voice. People want to hear your voice. Your voice matters. Your life matters. What matters to you, the things that you nerd out about and get excited about and are driven by, we want to hear about that in your voice. We want to hear you rant and get pumped up. I will tell you one of our application and essay coaches, he always says that's his favorite type of essay, where students just going off in a rant and is completely excited by what they're writing about, so much so that he's excited reading about it, even if he doesn't care about it in any way himself personally. Um, I always say my favorite essays are the ones that change how I see the world, right? That may sound very lofty and impossible, but truly it's not, right? Some of my favorite essays are, about a favorite color or a student whose parents didn't hang up professional artwork in their home, just the students and their siblings and what it was like growing up their own gallery, or the student who built his own computer. And it wasn't about that, but it was about the fact that after he built his computer, he made a point of washing his hands every single time before he used the computer he built. And the essay was an introspection and reflection on what it means to take pride in your own work, right? They were real. The students were just being real. They were sharing facets of their lives that represent essential pieces of their soul. And we need to support our students in connecting with their own authenticity and then celebrating that in words. That's an expectation that we can empower our students with. Taking expectations more literally, especially when perhaps here the better word is boundaries or limitations. Please be mindful of social media. Um, it's easy to blame so much on social media, uh, whether you're blaming a ton or a little on social media. What's inarguable is it's having an influence on the way that students are approaching this whole process and journey. And it's a big contributing force to why students are stressing each other out so much because everything's out there. So much is public. That's become normal. And then that obscures what normal actually means and what success actually looks like. We all know what social media does. People don't post their lowest moments, their saddest moments. People are curating the representations of themselves that they want others to believe. We all know this on some level intellectually, and yet we still fall into this trap all the time. And we doom scroll and we feel bad and we feel insecure, right? Slow down, limit social media. This isn't just the students, it's the parents too. One thing I say to students all the time, right, is they're looking at social media and they're looking at students and they're going, wow, everyone loves their college. Everyone loves where they're at. And I always say to them, they're not going to call you and tell you they're unhappy at the school that they're going to, right? It's just what they're putting out. A couple pictures is not their authentic experience. We get calls all the time. The transition to college is tough, right? Not just getting into college. And I say this to remind students and remind parents that we need to focus on our own realities and our own expectations and not try to live by someone else's journey or live up to or compare ourselves, right? All your followers and friends, they're not your core team. It's your family, right? In most cases, and a small group of others. And we take an enormous amount of pride being on our students and their families' teams. One last note about empowerment through expectations. It's important to acknowledge that expectations and limitations upfront reduce resentment later on. This is essential when you're talking about building a college listed home. Do not make anything an option that's not actually an option. One story that I personally share is that when I was a high school student, I grew up in Connecticut in the woods, pretty remote area. And my parents said, you're not getting on a plane to go to college. And I said, okay, well, I only want to go to colleges that are in a major city, in particular with professional sports teams, because I'm a huge sports fan, right? We both communicated and we both set our limitations and boundaries up front. How did I know I was going to thrive in a big city? I had never lived in a big city before, but that felt important to me. And my parents respected that. And they said, look, you're working within our limitation of not getting on a plane. So, look, I could tease my parents to this day and tell them, I probably would have preferred to go to an Emory or a WashU or a Northwestern, right? All plane rides away. Um, but I don't resent them in any way because those universities were never really options in the first place, right? The options were what was within my geographic limitations that they presented and what I presented to them and we agreed upon. That's not a story that's unique to me. I remember years ago a student on the East Coast who was enamored with a school on the West Coast, and that student's parents let them apply, and they got in. And then they got into a slightly higher ranked college on the East Coast. And all of a sudden, there was an enormous amount of pressure on the student to not go to their dream school on the West Coast. An option was not really an option, it was taken away. It's not just geographic, by the way, it's also financial. I remember another case where a student kept something on their list, even though if they didn't get X amount of financial aid or merit scholarship money, the family couldn't afford it. It was a struggle, at least. And they got in and they didn't get enough money. But because the conversations weren't had up front about money and what the student needed to get, after they got in, the parents said, well, this isn't really possible, or I don't want you going there because this is going to be a strain financially. Well, that was quite a disappointment to the student who had an enormous amount of anger in the situation. It led to such a tension and complicated family dynamic. The student ended up going to that school, but again, it put a financial strain on the family. So it's not just the students who may end up in a hurt or negative or resentful or situation, but the parents as well. It's empowerment through expectations. This is what it looks like. Communication with love, with reality, right? And being mindful that you're not just finding a school for the next 4 years, you're finding a home. Talk with each other. It's essential. Let's talk about the third pillar now, which is this idea of better person, better applicant, which is personally one of my favorite things to discuss. So much so that I built an entire TEDx talk around this back in 2018. And and I say that to really highlight a piece of our company's history, which is when we first started, we really focused on SAT and ACT prep and academic tutoring, and then really later on the college essays and applications. But something that really unsettled me for the first, half of this company's history was meeting with students for the first time in junior year, getting to know them and seeing these incredible, amazing, talented, curious, quirky, cool human beings. And then I'd go, what have you done with these interests that you have? And the student would look at me and say, well, I haven't. I just did these other clubs because I thought they were look good for college, even though I don't like them. Or, I didn't think anyone would care about this interest I have or this quirk or this hobby I have. And it pained me. And it's interesting because we share this TEDx talk that I gave quite frequently. Um, and a lot of people, knowing that we work with students on college essays and applications, they interpret it as a talk that should be listened to by 11th graders before they start drafting their college essays. When in reality, I really wish this talk was listened to by ninth and 10th graders to empower them, to make them realize that who they are is enough if they engage in meaningful and impactful and joyful ways. This is a huge part of now our company ethos. We now do college counseling meetings on an hourly basis with freshmen and sophomores, in part to talk about how to pursue their academic and personal interests in and out of the classroom, right? And it's, we hear the phrase a lot, oh, you're going to help us build our resume or tell our story, right? But really, it's just ensuring that these students are becoming happier and more fulfilled people. And that will naturally help them distinguish themselves as an applicant. We want to encourage them to zig when everyone else is zagging. We want to remind them of their humanity. AI cannot live your life for you. AI cannot do your activities and build, a life outside of the classroom and grades and test scores for you. That's you and your initiative. That's your agency. And building that sense of self and identity is so essential because authenticity does win the day in college admissions, especially when it's harnessed in meaningful and impactful ways. That brings me to one of my favorite words in the world, this word ikigai. And ikigai is what I hope is the foundation of your conversations at home as you talk with your students about activities. Ikigai is a Japanese word. There's no direct translation to the English language, but it is essentially the intersection of what you're good at, what you enjoy, and what the world needs. So getting in touch with your ikigai is the touchstone of the extracurricular journey, this idea of better person, better applicant. Notice, by the way, I'm keep avoiding the word passion, right? Passion is a very overused word today. Passion is, now we hear what about passion projects? Everyone needs to do a passion project. Um, the spirit of a passion project is well taken. I think when students hear the word passion, it causes insecurity and pressure. I would argue that most adults don't have any passions. Passion's a tough thing to come by in life. It's a really special thing when you can find it, a passion and capture it and embrace it. I really think Ikigai is a better foundation for most conversations because it can be really taking anything at that point and building off of that. So, you know, where do we start then with conversations about ikigai and activities, right? And extracurriculars. When we are meeting with students, the first thing we always say is tell us everything you do outside of the classroom. Lay it all out there, not just your clubs, not just your service, but your jobs, your family responsibilities, your hobbies, your quirks, what you do for friends, what you're binging on YouTube. Doesn't matter. Just anything that you do for fun and you do in life, right? The second question then we ask is tell us everything that's not making you happy because let's try to get rid of that. Let's try to eliminate that from your life. On the condition of our third question, what do you want to add to your life? Whether it's something you're doing, but you want to do more of, or is there something that you haven't seized the opportunity to do, but you're really excited to do? And you just haven't had the time or ability or confidence to go for it yet. This is your moment, right? Ninth and 10th grade, especially, are times to be curious and explorative and take chances to do things that could be really cool or really exciting and really meaningful. And look, we get it, right? There is a tension about talking about activities as a family in 10th, ninth, even 8th grade, right? We hear it all the time. I don't want to talk about college this early. It feels premature. It feels too early. I just want my kid to be a kid. We want that too. We want the same thing as you. We want your kids to be kids. It's never too early to talk about what makes your child happy, what's meaningful to them, what's going to bring them purpose, what's going to empower them to make an impact on the world. That's just, in my opinion, part of raising like the best possible person. And in turn, without once ever thinking about the word college, you will be raising a child who will be a better college applicant. Don't take my word or our team's word for it, by the way. Look at the questions that colleges are asking. A huge trend in college application essays right now is tell us something that brings you joy. And I will tell you right now, that is one of the essay prompts that our students struggle with the most. They're like, well, debate club brings me joy. And we have to look at them and go, that's not what they mean. They want to see who you are as a three-dimensional person beyond anything they see anywhere else. What lights up your life? What makes you smile? What do you live for? What do you get moved by? What moves your soul? We need to have these conversations early because anything can become a thing. Anything. I use the example in the TEDx talk I gave years ago of, what if your child comes home and says they want to start a rock band, right? Well, that's leadership, initiative, collaboration, creative talent. If they play gigs around town and get paid, that's a job. If they play charity at fundraising events, that's service. There's so much that can come out of anything. Work as a team, have conversations, see your child, see the student, and really say, how can we bring this to life in meaningful, impactful ways? Which brings us to our last pillar tonight. Happiness is success. It's where we started. It's one of the first things, if not the first thing, that we always say to our students, and it's how we're going to end tonight as well. Again, your students are not just finding a school, they're finding their next home. When a human being is happier in their home and their environment, they are going to thrive in every aspect of their life more. It is essential that happiness is considered. So don't discount what other people think is silly or what you may think is silly. What matters to your student, hear them. We have students who call us all the time and they say, I need warm weather. That may sound silly, but that can matter to them. We have skiers and mountain bikers who say we need to be near a mountain. If that's an essential pillar of their happiness, then that should be honored. And I guarantee you, there are plenty of colleges and universities, reaches, targets, and likelies that will meet their criteria for having a mountain nearby. It could be values, community. Am I well represented? Are people who look like me and share my ethnicity and my religion well represented and included and respected at this school? Do I want to be close to home, far from home, in a city, out of a city? Of course, finances, right? Especially if a student is looking to apply to grad school. There's no detail that's too serious or too silly to consider, right? Everything can contribute to a student's happiness. And that is the foundation for them thriving in college and at a university. So make happiness the focus at home. That doesn't mean we can take stress out of this process completely. That isn't impossible. And that is not what we're saying is achievable tonight. We know that. We can't make the stress go away entirely, but we can make this journey the least amount of stressful as possible by being a project manager, by helping with organization, by having empowering conversations, by giving perspectives, by mediating and talking things out, and by always checking in on the students' well-being because they are the one driving this ship. They are the captains of this voyage, right? Not projecting our stuff and our expectations onto them, but hearing them and what they need and their well-being is essential in this. And then working as a team to achieve that as well. Reminding them, again, that one extra AP will not make or break them. Giving them that essential perspective. Sticking with an activity that's making them miserable because they think it's going to get them into college is a myth, right? That one extra season of a sport is not or 2 extra seasons of a sport or that one club you're doing, it's not going to make or break you, especially if you then clear that off your schedule and then redirect your energies to something that's even more exciting and lights up your life even more and makes you shine on an application even more. Look, even students whose activities could help them get an easy ticket into college, students who are recruited athletes or are going to get recruited for a creative talent like a musical instrument, if they really don't want to play that sport or that instrument in college, it's time to not have them do it anymore and to move on, right? I understand there's a transactional benefit, but none of it's worth it if your child is truly unhappy. By the way, on this last point, transferring schools, right? And I mean transferring high schools in this case. Throughout the years, we always get calls every single year about our student is struggling at this school academically, socially, emotionally, but we're worried that if they transfer high schools, it will reflect poorly on them on a college application. You can't think that way. Time is precious. Time is valuable. You're sacrificing amazing special years of your kid's life, leaving them at a school, thinking that college just want that consistency. You know what colleges and college admissions officers really want? They want kids who are happy and confident and empowered and well-adjusted, who are going to be community leaders and teammates and friends and partners on campus. That's what they want. Set your student up for success by laying a foundation of happiness in their journey. It's essential for the college application process. It's essential for their life journey. So if you can't tell, all of this is at the core of who we are and how we advise and what we do at Ivy Experience. This is truly what separates us from any college admissions prep company out there. We care about our students more than anyone else. We are in the trenches with students and families. There's a reason that so many of our students text and call us before many of their family members and closest friends when they start getting their admissions decisions. It's because they know we were in it with them and we've forged such a close, personal, important bond with them. It's really emotional and impactful, and we take a tremendous amount of pride in this. Emphasizing students' mental health and their happiness and their well-being in this journey is why we do so much educational programming, not just a concerted event like tonight, but it's how we frame conversations on every webinar and every college night and every collaboration we do with schools and organizations. We want to be student advocates and people who empower and mentor our students throughout this journey. We try to give as much education as possible because knowing how to navigate the college admissions process is way more than half the battle. And the more information you have with the right expectations and right insights, you are going to feel calmer as a parent. And if you are calmer as a parent, your student is going to feel calmer and less stressed out. Be a team in that way. We want to empower people with information. There's a lot to navigate in this journey. Each individual component is overwhelmingly not that complicated. It's the quantity of what you have to navigate, oftentimes, not the quality. That's why we do so much education. Even in the direct services we provide, students' well-being is at the core of it. We are constantly talking about minimizing time and energy and money and stress invested in this journey. It's a big reason we provide free SAT and ACT diagnostic tests to any family who reaches out to us. Any family that reaches out to us, we will send those diagnostic tests. We will grade and evaluate them for free because maybe that student is going to be like I was in high school, someone who scored way higher on one test than the other to the point that I really didn't need to do much studying. That saved me an enormous, and my family an enormous amount of time, energy, money, and stress. We want to help students have conversations earlier and plan better so that it can reduce stress and tension later on. And it's why we start meeting with students and families even at the beginning of high school, so that students and families know that we are invested in their journeys, caring about them throughout the process, fostering personal relationships, knowing that they can email and text us throughout the years, and that we're going to be part of their team throughout the process. This is what the Ivy experience is. This is what our team does, and we take an enormous amount of pride in what we do. So we hope that tonight was meaningful and helpful and enlightening. Thank you for attending the presentation. Thank you for watching this video. If you're watching on YouTube, if this was helpful, please share it with others. We want people to hear this message. We hope that you give us a call or send us an email. We'd love to be part of your team. But no matter what, please listen to the lessons from tonight, and we hope it empowers and helps your family as they navigate this process. I also would be remiss before I end tonight to not give an enormous thank you to one of our team members, Teddy Allure, who was pivotal in collaborating on this presentation. Teddy is an essential team player on our team and brings an enormous amount of care every single day and has such sensitivity to the values we embrace and how we work with students. So I do want to give him a personal shout out and thank you for how unbelievably helpful he was in preparing me to present to you all tonight. So with that said, please do not hesitate to reach out to us anytime. Scan the QR code to set up a meeting. We are here for your family, and we look forward to talking with you soon. Best of luck on your students' journeys.